Okay, let's unpack this. Take a moment and just think about your own body. How on earth do billions of tiny cells manage to work together to build something as complex, as intricate as you?
It's an amazing question, isn't it? Moving, sensing, thinking, digesting, all happening at once.
Right.
How does that intricate coordination arise from, well, individual cells?
Exactly. How do you go from single cells, where one cell basically does everything, to this massive, coordinated team effort in a multicellular creature?
That's the core puzzle. And this guide we're looking at today, it really tackles that head on. It starts right at the bottom with the cells and how they get organized.
Right, the fundamental building blocks. And then it scales up, looking at the systems that make up an animal body.
And what I really like is that it doesn't just stay theoretical. It zooms in on three specific animals, the earthworm, the cockroach, and the frog.
Hmm.
So you can see these principles playing out in, well, quite different biological setups.
It's like looking at different ways to solve the same problems, isn't it? How to eat, breathe, move, sense things, make more of yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. Different biological engineering solutions.
So our mission today, dig into this source, pull out those key ideas, maybe highlight some surprising bits, and just get to grips with how these different animals pull it off.
Sounds good. Let's start where the source does the absolute foundation, animal tissues.
Okay, so the guide draws this immediate contrast. You've got your single-celled organism that's doing everything itself, digestion, breathing, the works.
The ultimate multitasker. But in a complex animal with millions, billions of cells, that just doesn't scale. It's not efficient.
No way.
So you need specialization. That's where this idea of division of labor comes in. Different cell groups take on specific jobs.
And these specialized groups of cells, plus the stuff between them, that's what a tissue is.
That's it. A group of similar cells, often with intercellular substances working together for a particular function. It's the next level up from a single cell.
And here's something that jumped out at me right away. The source says, despite this huge variety of complex animals out there,
They're all built from just 4 basic types of tissue. Only 4.
it's really something, isn't it? Shows the power of combining simple units in complex ways. So, shall we run through them?
Let's do it. First up is epithelial tissue.
Right. Think covering and lining. It forms sheets that cover the outside of the body, like your skin, or line the inside surfaces of cavities, ducts, tubes.
Like the inside of your stomach or blood vessels?
Exactly. And the key thing is the cells are packed really tightly together, very little space between them.
Makes sense for a barrier.
And the source mentions 2 main types based on layers. Simple epithelium, just a single layer of cells,
Okay.
usually found where things need to pass through easily, like diffusion in the lungs or secretion and absorption in the gut.
And the other type?
Compound epithelium, multiple layers stacked up, 2 or more,
So tougher.
definitely. Its main job is protection. Think skin, resisting scrapes and chemicals, or lining the mouth where there's also wear and tear. It's not really designed for absorption or secretion like the simple type.
Got it. Simple for exchange, compound for protection. And the source even breaks down simple epithelium by cell shape, doesn't it?
It does. Squamous or flat, thin cells perfect for diffusion like in lung air sacs or blood vessel walls. Cuboidal or cube-shaped, often involved in secretion or absorption like in kidney tubules.
Ah, and columnar are tall, pillar-like cells?
Right. Often for secretion and absorption like lining the stomach and intestines. Their nuclei are usually near the base.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the source notes, their free surface has microvilli to increase absorption area.
Little projections.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other specialized types?
Yeah, 2 more mentioned. Ciliated epithelium, these are usually cuboidal or columnar cells, but they have cilia, tiny hair-like things on their surface.
What do they do?
They beat rhythmically to move stuff along, like mucus in your airways or eggs moving down the fallopian tubes.
Clever. And the last one?
Glandular epithelium. Cells specialized just for making and secreting substances.
Like glands, basically.
Exactly. They can be single cells scattered within another epithelium, like goblet cells making mucus in your gut. Or they can form complex multicellular glands, like your salivary glands.
And how do these glands release their products?
2 ways. Exocrine glands use ducts to release their secretions onto a surface or into a cavity. Think sweat, saliva, digestive enzymes. Endocrine glands are ductless. They release hormones directly into the fluid surrounding them, which then enters the bloodstream.
Like the thyroid gland releasing thyroid hormone. Okay.
Yes.
So that covers the types. But how do all these epithelial cells actually stick together so tightly?
Good question. Cell junctions. The source mentions 3 key types that hold epithelial cells and others together and let them communicate.
Yeah.
Tight junctions act like seals, almost like stitching cells together to prevent anything leaking between them,
Watertight.
pretty much. Then you have adhering junctions, which are more like cementing spots, holding cells firmly together.
Okay. And the third?
Gap junctions. These are fascinating. They're actual channels connecting the cytoplasm of adjacent cells.
So things can pass directly from cell to cell.
Yeah. Ions, small molecules. It allows for really rapid communication and coordination between cells.
Wow. Okay, that's epithelial tissue covering, lining, glands, junctions. What's number 2?
Connective tissue. And the name says it all. It connects, supports, and binds other tissues and organs. It's actually the most abundant and widespread tissue type in complex animals.
So it's kind of the body's internal framework and filler.
That's a great way to think about it. It ranges hugely from soft, squishy stuff to hard bone and even fluid blood.
Fluid. How is blood connective tissue?
Well, it fits the definition cells within a matrix, plasma, and its function is definitely connecting different parts of the body by transport. The key components, apart from blood, are cells that secrete structural protein fibers.
Like collagen.
Collagen for strength, yes, and elastin for flexibility. These fibers are embedded in a matrix, or ground substance, which the cells also secrete. Blood is the exception. The source points out its matrix is fluid plasma, and it doesn't secrete those fibers.
Okay, that makes sense. What are the main categories?
The source breaks it down into 3 broad types. First, loose connective tissue. Here, the cells and fibers are, well, loosely arranged in a semi-fluid matrix.
Like?
Areolar tissue is a key example. It's found under the skin, supporting epithelia, kind of like packing material. It contains various cells like fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells. Adipose tissue, fat tissue, is another type of loose connective tissue, specialized for storing fat.
Where we store extra energy.
Right. Then you have dense connective tissue. As the name suggests, the fibers in fibroblast are much more densely packed.
Tighter structure.
Exactly. 2 subtypes here. Dense regular, where the collagen fibers are all lined up in parallel bundles, tendons connecting muscle to bone, and ligaments connecting bone to bone, built to resist strong pulling forces in one direction.
Like ropes.
Perfect analogy. And dense irregular, where the fibers run in different directions. This gives strength against tension from multiple directions. You find this in the deeper layers of the skin, for example.
Like a woven fabric. Okay, loose and dense. What's the third main type?
Specialized connective tissue. This category includes things like cartilage. It's firm but pliable, resists compression. Found in your nose tip, outer ear joints, between vertebrae. The source notes that in vertebrate embryos, much of the skeleton starts as cartilage and is later replaced by bone.
Which brings us to bone itself, also specialized connective tissue.
Right. Hard and non-pliable matrix, full of calcium salts and collagen fibers for strength. It provides the body's structural frame, protects organs, and works with muscles for movement. And crucially, bone marrow inside many bones is where blood cells are made.
Don't forget that. And the last specialized one mentioned.
Blood, the fluid connective tissue we talked about.
Yep.
Plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, the body's transport system.
Incredible variety under one heading, connective tissue. Okay, that's 2 down. Epithelial and connective. What's the third?
Muscular tissue. This is all about movement. It's made of elongated cells, usually called fibers, which contain specialized proteins that allow them to contract or shorten.
The power generators.
Exactly. When stimulated, they contract, generating force. Then they relax and lengthen. This allows for everything from walking and lifting to the beating of your heart and the churning of your stomach.
And the source mentions 3 types here too.
Yes. First, skeletal muscle. This is the muscle attached to your bones, the stuff you consciously control, like your biceps or leg muscles. It looks striped or striated under a microscope, and it's voluntary.
You choose to move it.
Right. Second, smooth muscle. Found in the walls of internal organs, blood vessels, stomach, intestines. Its fibers aren't striated, they're spindle-shaped. And crucially, it's involuntary. You don't consciously control your digestion or blood pressure regulation.
Probably for the best.
Probably. And third, cardiac muscle. Found only in the heart wall. It's striated like skeletal muscle, but it's involuntary like smooth muscle.
What's special about it?
It has unique junctions between cells called intercalated discs. These lock the cells together and contain gap junctions, allowing electrical signals to pass extremely quickly from cell to cell.
So the whole heart muscle contracts as one coordinated unit.
Precisely. A wave of contraction sweeps through it very efficiently.
Okay. Skeletal, voluntary striated. Smooth, involuntary, non-striated. Cardiac, involuntary, striated, heart only. Got it. One more basic tissue type to go.
The fourth is neural tissue. This is the command and control system. It exerts the greatest control over the body's responsiveness to changing conditions, both internal and external.
Nerves.
Nerves, brain, spinal cord, yes. It's made of two main cell types. Neurons, which are the excitable cells that generate and transmit electrical signals, or nerve impulses, and neuroglia, or glial cells.
What do they do?
They're the support cells for neurons. They protect them, insulate them, nourish them. The source actually notes they make up more than half the volume of neural tissue, so they're incredibly important.
The unsung heroes of the nervous system?
You could say that. So a neuron gets stimulated, and electrical disturbance travels along its membrane, its axon. When that signal reaches the end of the neuron,
It passes the message on.
it triggers either stimulation or inhibition of whatever is next in line, another neuron, a muscle cell, a gland cell. That's how information travels and responses are coordinated.
Mind-blowing complexity. Okay, so just to recap. Epithelial, covering lining, connective support linking, muscular movement, and neural control communication.
The four pillars of animal tissue organization.
And thinking about it, every part of your body, skin, bone, muscle, brain, gut, is just different combinations and arrangements of these four fundamental types.
It really is. An amazing system built from surprisingly few basic components. But of course, tissues don't just exist in isolation, they organize further.
Right, that's the next level. The source explains that these basic tissues group together to form organs.
Like the stomach, the heart, the kidneys, the lungs, these are distinct structures with specific functions.
And an organ isn't usually just one type of tissue, is it?
No, that's key. Most organs are made of two or more tissue types, often all four working together. The heart is the perfect example mentioned again. Epithelial lining, connective tissue structure, cardiac muscle for pumping, neural tissue for regulation. All four collaborating.
And then organs work together too.
Yep, that's the level of organ systems. Groups of organs that cooperate, either physically linked or through chemical signals, to carry out a major body function.
Like the digestive system, mouth, esophagus, stomach, intestines, liver, pancreas, all working together to break down and absorb food.
Or the respiratory system, or the circulatory system. This whole hierarchy, cells to tissues to organs to systems, allows for incredible efficiency and coordination. It's that division of labor playing out on a grand scale, enabling complex life.
A masterclass in organization. Okay, so now that we have the basic principles, the source shifts gears. It wants us to see how this plays out in real animals.
Exactly. We get 3 case studies, the earthworm, the cockroach, and the frog, looking at both their external form, morphology, and their internal structure, anatomy.
Let's start with the earthworm, that familiar reddish-brown invertebrate living in moist soil.
Pharadima or lumbricus are common examples mentioned. They live in burrows, they make themselves.
Morphology first. Long cylindrical body. The most obvious feature is it's segmented, right? Divided into all those little rings.
Yes, metameres, around 100 to 120 typically. You can usually see a dark line down the back. That's the main dorsal blood vessel. The ventral side, the bottom, is where the genital openings are.
The front end has the mouth and this little fleshy lobe overhanging it.
That's the prostomium. It helps wedge open cracks in the soil for burrowing and also has sensory functions. The very first segment containing the mouth is the peristomium.
And somewhere in the front third, there's that noticeable band.
The clitellum. A thick, glandular, darker band covering segments 14 to 16 in mature worms. Very important for reproduction.
Okay. And they have tiny bristles.
Setae. Rows of little S-shaped bristles embedded in the skin on most segments. They can be extended and retracted.
What are they for?
Locomotion, primarily. They anchor parts of the body against the soil while other parts contract or extend, allowing the worm to move.
Neat. Okay, let's look inside the anatomy. The body wall is layered.
Yes. A thin outer cuticle, then the epidermis, a single layer of columnar epithelial cells, some are gland cells, then 2 muscle layers, circular first, then longitudinal inside that, and finally the innermost lining of the body cavity, the coelomic epithelium.
Layers of those basic tissues we talked about. What about their gut?
It's described as a straight tube running from the mouth at the front to the anus at the back. Mouth leads to buccal cavity, then pharynx, esophagus,
Yeah.
then a muscular gizzard.
A gizzard, like a bird.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Since they eat soil and decaying leaves, the gizzard grinds up the harder bits. Very important. After the gizzard comes the stomach, which the source notes has calciferous glands to neutralize humic acids from the soil.
Wow, specialized chemistry too.
Then the long intestine, where digestion and absorption happen. There are some interesting features here, too. a pair of pouches called intestinal sacae, and an internal fold called the typhlosul.
What does that do?
The typhlosul significantly increases the surface area inside the intestine for absorbing nutrients from that relatively low-value food source, the soil. Clever adaptation.
Makes sense. How about getting nutrients around? Circulation.
They have a closed circulatory system. Blood stays within vessels. There are hearts and smaller vessels supplying the gut, nerve cord, and body wall. Blood circulates in one direction due to contractions.
And their blood.
It contains hemoglobin, the oxygen-carrying pigment, but it's dissolved directly in the plasma, not inside red blood cells like ours. They also have blood cells produced by blood glands in the anterior segments, which are phagocytic, meaning they engulf foreign particles.
So, DeFisa, how do they breathe? No lungs.
Nope. No specialized respiratory organs at all. They rely entirely on diffusion through their moist body surface. Oxygen dissolves in the moisture on their skin and passes into the blood vessels just underneath.
That's why they have to stay damp if they dry out.
They suffocate. Exactly. Waste removal is handled by nephridia.
Little kidney-like structures.
Yeah, segmentally arranged pairs of tubules. The source mentions 3 types based on where they empty waste, either onto the body surface or into the intestine, but they all function similarly. They collect fluid from the body cavity column, filter out waste, and expel it, helping regulate the fluid balance too.
Efficient waste management. Nervous system.
It's based on a paired ventral nerve cord running the length of the body, with swellings called ganglia in each segment. Up front, in segments 3 and 4, the nerve cord splits, goes around the pharynx, and connects to dorsal cerebral ganglia, essentially the earthworm's brain, forming a nerve ring.
So a sort of centralized control hub at the front, coordinating sensory input and muscle commands?
Precisely. They don't have eyes, but they have light-sensitive and touch-sensitive receptor cells, especially at the anterior end, allowing them to sense light intensity and ground vibrations, and chemoreceptors for tasting chemical stimuli.
Okay, reproduction. They're hermaphrodites, right? Both sexes in one worm.
Correct. They have both tests making sperm and ovaries making eggs. Tests are in segments 10 and 11, ovaries around 12, 13, but they don't self-fertilize typically.
They still need a partner.
Yes, they practice mutual exchange of sperm. 2 worms align themselves ventrally, and sperm is passed from each worm into the other spermathecae, which are sperm storage sacs located in segments 6 to 9.
Okay, so they store the received sperm. Then what?
Later, the clitellum secretes a tube that forms a cocoon. As the worm backs out of this tube, eggs from its ovaries and sperm received from its partner, released from the spermathecae, are deposited into the cocoon, along with nutritive fluid.
So fertilization happens inside the cocoon after the worms have separated?
Exactly. The cocoon seals up and is deposited in the soil. Development occurs within the cocoon.
And what hatches out?
Little baby earthworms. Development is direct. There's no larval stage. A cocoon can produce maybe 2 to 20 worms, average around 4, after about 3 weeks.
Fascinating life cycle. And of course, we know they're super important ecologically.
Absolutely. Friends of farmers, as the source says. Their burrowing aerates the soil, improves drainage, helps roots penetrate, and their breakdown of organic matter enriches the soil. Vermicomposting uses this process. Plus, bait for fishing.
Can't forget the bait. Okay, from the beneficial earthworm to maybe a less popular creature, the cockroach.
Periplanta americana, the American cockroach, is the example used.
Yeah.
A common inhabitant of, well, often human dwellings, especially damp, warm places. Nocturnal omnivores.
And unfortunately known as pests and carriers of disease. Morphology-wise, they look quite different. Hard outer shell.
Yes, a tough, brown, chitinous exoskeleton. The body is segmented and clearly divided into head, thorax, and abdomen. The exoskeleton plates are called sclerites.
The head seems quite mobile.
It is. Triangular shape, connected to the thorax by a flexible neck, allowing it to move around easily. It's packed with sensory gear, large compound eyes.
Made of many small lenses.
Yeah, the source mentions about 2,000 hexagonal units called ommatidia per eye. Gives them mosaic vision, sensitive to movement, good for low light. Also, long thread-like antenna for touch and smell, and complex biting and chewing mouth parts.
Built for exploring and eating almost anything. Then the thorax.
3 segments: prothorax, mesothorax, metathorax. Each thoracic segment has a pair of walking legs, and the last 2 segments bear wings.
2 pairs.
Yep. The first pair, attached to the methathorax, are the tegmina. They're leathery, dark, and protective, covering the hind wings when at rest. The second pair, from the metathorax, are the hind wings. These are thin, membranous, transparent, and used for flight.
Though they mostly scurry, right?
Often, yes. The abdomen has 10 segments. There are some differences between males and females here.
How can you tell them apart?
The female's 7th ventral plate, sternum, is boat-shaped and forms part of a genital pouch. Males have a genital pouch at the very end, and importantly, males have a pair of short, thread-like anal styles on the ninth sternum, which females lack.
Anal styles on males only. Got it. Both sexes have longer feelers at the back.
Yes, a pair of jointed filamentous anal cerci on the 10th segment. These are sensory, detecting air currents and vibrations.
Okay, let's look inside. Anatomy. Digestive system.
A tube again divided into foregut, midgut, and hindgut. Foregut includes pharynx, esophagus, a crop for storing food.
And another gizzard.
Yep, a muscular gizzard or proventriculus. This one has thick muscle and 6 sharp chitinous teeth inside for really grinding the food. Foregut's lined with cuticle.
Tough grinder. What about digestion?
At the junction of foregut and midgut, there are 6 to 8 finger-like projections called hepatic or gastric hyca that secrete digestive juices into the midgut. The midgut is where most digestion and absorption happens.
And waste removal. Earthworms had nephridia.
Cockroaches have Malpighian tubules.
Okay.
About 150 thin yellow filaments found at the junction of the midgut and hindgut. They float in the body fluid, hemolymph.
What do they do?
They absorb nitrogenous waste products in the hemolymph, convert them into uric acid, and empty it into the hindgut to be eliminated with the feces. This excretion of uric acid makes them uricotelic, which is very efficient for water conservation.
Ah, good adaptation for land life. Circulation. You said hemolymph.
Yes, they have an open circulatory system. Blood vessels are poorly developed. The heart is basically a long tube running along the back with chambers. It pumps the hemolymph forward, which then flows out into the body cavity, the hemocoel, directly bathing all the organs before returning to the heart through openings called ostia.
So the organs are just sitting in the blood fluid.
Essentially, yes. The hemolymph itself is colorless. It doesn't carry oxygen.
How do they get oxygen then?
Through a completely separate system. The respiratory system, which is a network of air tubes called tracheae.
Air tubes running through the body.
Exactly. They open to the outside through 10 pairs of small holes called spiracles along the sides of the body. These spiracles lead into the tracheal tubes, which branch finer and finer, becoming tracheoles, reaching every part of the body.
So oxygen goes directly to the tissues through these tubes. No need for blood to carry it.
Correct. Gas exchange happens by diffusion directly between the tracheoles and the cells. The spiracles have valves to control air intake and prevent water loss.
A very different system. What about their nervous system?
It's interesting. It consists of a series of segmental ganglia, nerve clusters, joined by a paired ventral nerve cord. 3 ganglia in the thorax, 6 in the abdomen. So it's quite spread out, decentralized.
There's still a brain in the head, though.
Yes, a supraesophageal ganglion in the head, which mainly innervates the antenna and compound eyes. But a lot of the basic control is distributed along the ventral nerve cord.
And this explains that famous, slightly gruesome fact.
That they can live for some time, maybe a week, without their head, yes. Because essential functions like breathing, controlled by spiracles, and basic movement reflexes are managed by the ganglia in the thorax and abdomen, not solely by the brain. The head is needed for coordinated behavior and sensing, but the body can tick over for a while without it.
Remarkable. And a bit creepy. Okay, reproduction. Separate sexes.
Yes, dioecious. Males have tests, produce sperm, which get bundled into packets called spermatophores. Females have ovaries, produce eggs. They also have accessory glands.
How does mating work?
The male transfers a spermatophore to the female. Sperm are released from it and stored in the female's spermatheca. Fertilization occurs as eggs pass down the oviduct.
And the eggs are laid in that case.
Yes, the fertilized eggs are encased in a dark, reddish-brown protective capsule called an ootheca. Each ootheca contains about 16 eggs. The female deposits these oothecae in safe, humid places, often near food.
In development.
It's perometabolous, meaning gradual metamorphosis. What hatches from the egg is a nymph, which looks like a small, wingless version of the adult.
So no caterpillar stage or anything like that.
No. The nymph just eats, grows, and molts its exoskeleton multiple times, the source says about 13 times. Wing pads appear in later nymphal stages, and the final molt reveals the winged adult.
A resilient life cycle for a resilient creature. Pests, yes, but biologically fascinating.
Absolutely. That direct oxygen delivery system, the decentralized nervous system, very effective adaptations.
Okay, one more animal to explore. From the land-based insect to an amphibian, the frog.
Rhonatogrina, the Indian bullfrog, is the example. Amphibians, of course, famously live a double life, partly in water, partly on land.
And they have some key characteristics tied to this. They're poikilotherms, right? Broad-blooded.
Yes, Their body temperature fluctuates with the environment. They can't regulate it internally like mammals or birds. This influences their behavior.
Like hiding when it's too hot or too cold.
Exactly. They undergo estivation, summer sleep, in hot, dry periods, and hibernation, winter sleep, in cold periods, often sheltering in cool, moist burrows.
They're also known for camouflage.
Yes, they can change their skin color somewhat
Yeah.
to blend in with their surroundings, a form of mimicry for protection.
And their skin itself is crucial, isn't it?
Absolutely vital. It's smooth, slippery due to mucus secretion, and kept constantly moist. It's permeable to water. The source emphasizes they absorb water through their skin and don't drink. Plus, it's highly vascularized for respiration.
Breathing through their skin, we'll come back to that. Morphology, body shape is pretty simple.
Just head and trunk. No distinct neck or tail in the adult frog. The skin color is typically olive green with dark spots dorsally on the back and pale yellow ventrally underneath.
Head features, prominent eyes.
Yes, large, bulged eyes. They have a nictitating membrane, a transparent third eyelid that can cover the eye for protection underwater while still allowing some vision. Behind the eye is the tympanum, the circular eardrum. Nostrils are on top.
Limbs.
2 pairs. Forelimbs are shorter with 4 digits. Hind limbs are much larger, more muscular, with 5 digits that are webbed. Great for swimming and powerful leaping.
Can you tell males from females easily?
Yes, there's sexual dimorphism. Male frogs have vocal sacs, used for croaking, especially in mating season, and rough copulatory pads on the first digit of their forelimbs, which help them grip the female during mating. Females lack both of these.
Okay, anatomy time. How's their digestive system?
Well developed. It consists of the alimentary canal and associated glands, liver, pancreas. The canal itself is relatively short, which is typical for carnivores like frogs, as meat is easier to digest than plant matter.
So mouth. Then what?
Mouth opens into the buccal cavity, then pharynx, short esophagus, stomach, caudal intestine, duodenum, ileum, rectum, and finally the cloaca.
Cloaca. What's that?
It's a common chamber at the end that receives waste from the digestive system, feces, waste from the excretory system, urine, and also reproductive products, sperm or eggs. It opens to the outside.
Multi-purpose exit. How do they catch food?
With their sticky bilobed tongue, which is attached to the front of the mouth and flips out rapidly to snag insects.
Digestion happens in the stomach and intestine, with help from
The liver, which produces bile, stored in the gallbladder, to help digest fats, and the pancreas, which produces pancreatic juice containing enzymes for digesting carbohydrates and proteins. Bile and pancreatic juice enter the duodenum via a common duct. Absorption happens mainly in the intestine, which has internal folds called villi and microvilli to increase surface area.
Okay, now respiration. You mentioned the skin.
Yes, frogs have multiple ways to breathe. In water, they rely solely on cutaneous respiration gas exchange through their highly vascular skin. Dissolved oxygen diffuses in, carbon dioxide diffuses out.
And on land.
On land, they use 3 methods. Continued cutaneous respiration through the skin, gas exchange across the moist lining of the buccal cavity, mouth, and pulmonary respiration using their lungs.
They have lungs too.
Yes, a pair of simple, pinkish, sac-like lungs in the upper trunk. Air is drawn into the buccal cavity through the nostrils, then forced into the lungs.
So they use skin, mouth lining, and lungs on land. Versatile.
Very. And during hibernation or estivation, when they might be buried and inactive, they rely predominantly on skin respiration.
Incredible system. How about circulation?
Well-developed, closed circulatory system, like the earthworm, but more complex. They also have a lymphatic system. The heart is key. It's 3-chambered.
3 chambers. How does that work?
2 upper chambers called atria, right and left, and 1 lower chamber, the ventricle. Deoxygenated blood from the body enters the right atrium. Oxygenated blood from the lungs and skin enters the left atrium.
Okay.
Both atria empty into the single ventricle. So there's some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood in the ventricle before it gets pumped out to the body, and the lung skin circuit via a structure called the coccánus arteriosus.
So it's not fully separated like in mammals?
No, it's a characteristic feature of amphibian circulation. It's efficient enough for their metabolic needs and lifestyle. They also have specialized portal systems, hepatic portal, gut to liver, and renal portal, lower body to kidneys.
Yeah.
Blood contains plasma, nucleated red blood cells with hemoglobin, white blood cells, and platelets.
All right. Excretion. Getting rid of waste.
They have a pair of compact, dark red, bean-shaped kidneys located dorsally. These filter nitrogenous waste from the blood. Frogs are ureatelic. They primarily excrete urea.
Where does the urine go?
Thin tubes called ureters carry urine from each kidney down to the cloaca. In males, the ureters also carry sperm, so they're called urinogenital ducts. In females, the ureters and the oviducts, carrying eggs, open separately into the cloaca. There's also a thin-walled urinary bladder connected to the cloaca for temporary urine storage.
Makes sense. Nervous system must be quite advanced, too.
Yes, highly evolved. It includes the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, cranial and spinal nerves, and autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic, plus an endocrine system with glands like pituitary, thyroid, adrenals, etc., secreting hormones for coordination. Enclosed in a bony brain case, cranium. Divided into forebrain, olfactory lobes for smell, cerebral hemispheres, diencephalon, midbrain optic lobes for vision, and hindbrain, cerebellum for balance coordination, medulla oblongata controlling vital functions. The medulla connects to the spinal cord, protected within the vertebral column. They have 10 pairs of cranial nerves,
In sense organs.
touch receptors in the skin, taste buds on the tongue, olfactory epithelium in the nose for smell, well-organized eyes for vision, and ears for hearing and balance.
With ears. I only see the eardrum.
Right, the external ear is absent.
Yeah.
The tympanum, eardrum, is visible externally. Behind it lies the middle and inner ear structures responsible for hearing and equilibrium.
Got it. Last system, reproduction, separate sexes, well organized.
Yes. Males have a pair of yellowish ovoid testes attached near the kidneys. Tiny tubes called vasa efferentia lead from the testes into the kidney, connecting to a structure called Bitter's canal, which then communicates with the urinogenital duct that leads to the cloaca.
So sperm travels through part of the kidney structure.
In essence, yes, sharing the duct with urine. Females have a pair of large ovaries, also near the kidneys, but not functionally connected. Eggs are released into the body cavity and then enter the coiled oviducts, which open separately into the cloaca.
And fertilization.
It's external, occurring in water. The male climbs onto the female's back, a process called amplexus, and releases sperm over the eggs as the female lays them. A female can lay thousands of eggs, 2,500 to 3,000 at a time.
Wow. And development involves that famous transformation.
Yes. The fertilized egg develops into an aquatic larva called a tadpole. Tadpoles breathe with gills, have a tail, and look very different from adult frogs. They then undergo metamorphosis, a hormonally controlled process, gradually developing lungs, limbs, losing the tail, and changing their internal systems to become a terrestrial, semi-aquatic adult frog.
That metamorphosis is just incredible to think about. And frogs are useful, right?
Definitely. They eat vast numbers of insects, helping control pests and protecting crops. They're an important link in food webs, both as predators and prey. And in some parts of the world, frog legs are considered a delicacy.
Right. Okay, what a fantastic tour. From the basic building blocks to these 3 really different animal designs.
We started with that core idea, all complex animals built from just 4 fundamental tissue types: epithelial, connective, muscular, and neural.
Yeah, and how those tissues organize into organs like the heart or stomach with multiple tissue types working together.
And then organs cooperate in complex organ systems, digestive, respiratory, nervous, and so on, to keep the whole organism running. Division of labor at every level.
Then seeing it in action. The earthworm, perfectly adapted for life underground with its segmented body, skin breathing, and that grinding gizzard.
The cockroach, a master of survival with its tough exoskeleton, direct tracheal breathing saving water, and that decentralized nervous system allowing it to function even after losing its head.
And the frog, bridging water and land with its multiple breathing methods, permeable skin, 3-chambered heart, and that amazing tadpole metamorphosis.
They look so different, operate in such different ways, but underneath it all, you see the same fundamental principles of organization and specialization solving the basic problems of life.
It really highlights the variety of solutions evolution has come up with, doesn't it? Skin breathing versus tracheo versus lungs, closed circulation versus open circulation, different ways to handle waste.
It does.
Yeah.
And understanding this diversity, this range of biological engineering, really gives you a deeper appreciation for the complexity and elegance of all life, including how your own body is put together.
Absolutely. Thinking about how those 4 simple tissue types can be combined in so many ways to create everything from an earthworm to, well, us. It's quite profound.
It really is. And makes you wonder, given this elegance built on simple foundations, what other surprisingly fundamental principles might be hiding beneath the surface of the vast, complex tapestry of life we see around us?
A great thought to end on. Something for all of us to ponder.